an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Killing Eve, Season 1, Episode 6, Take Me to the Hole. In this episode, Villanelle falls for what I thought was a pretty obvious trap, and Eve is really beginning to have her doubts about Carolyn. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. First of all, thank you to Khai for commissioning this episode. Khai, if you're out there, I appreciate you. It has been over a month since the last episode, and I am so glad to be back. This episode was really busy. There was a lot going on. And this is not a slow-moving show, but anytime that we have characters like suddenly show up in a different country, then it feels like things have accelerated quite a bit more in comparison to other episodes where, you know, we pick up with, for example, Bill being murdered, and then we jump to his funeral. So there's been time since the last episode ended. But within that episode, from the funeral to when everything else occurs, there isn't a time jump like in there. And in this episode, we have that time jump of like the travel and everything. And there's also some relationship stuff happening here. It is a mess, you guys. I don't know what to think about this. And forgive me, I'm going to adjust my mic here a little bit. I really need to remember to do this before I start. All right, I'm just going to dive into this. So the episode starts off with Villanelle being given her new assignment by Constantine. And he's explaining to her that she is going in to kill Nadia and that he is going to get her out. She just has to get herself put in the hole, and then he will come and pick her up and get her out of there. And immediately, right? Come on. I'm not the only one. I'm not trying to be like, oh, I'm so smart. I think we're supposed to know this is going to happen, right? Because it is just so obvious. This bitch fucked up in her whole thing with Nadia, not playing nice with the rest of her team, and then failing to actually kill Nadia of all the incompetent things. And not only that, has been out here messing with different agents, doing whatever the fuck she feels like doing. She is a loose cannon. They can't have that. And she really thinks that they are just going to give her the chance to go in and kill Nadia and clean up after herself, and there are not going to be any repercussions to her fuck up. It's a real moment of kind of realization, I hope, for her, in terms of her lack of understanding up until this point, I think, of what her role is in all of this. She seems to really think that she's so good at her job and so special that they can't risk losing her. She overvalues her position within this organization. And it's hard to watch because we know that is not how it works. We know that she's one small cog in a machine. And yes, she's a high performer. Yes, she can carry out assassinations that are nigh impossible. But when the risks begin to outweigh the rewards, it's a very simple equation, and she is not going to come out on top with that. And she just doesn't really seem to grasp what risks she's really taking. It seems like there's a part of her that believes that they are overcautious, or that they are overreacting to the things that she has to the liberties she has taken, because either she doesn't understand the big picture because there's a part of her that's weirdly like disconnected and almost childlike in her understanding of like what's actually her role, or she doesn't care. And I think that's more likely. She just doesn't care and it just sees it in terms of what she does. And that's all that really matters. But yeah, this is a mess. Oh, nice. Oh, hi, Kai's here. Hi, Khai. And Agnes is in the chat and she says, also she knows about Constantine's daughter. True. That's a good point. I had forgotten about that. And Khai says she has the same arrogance dealing with Eve and her team. She thinks she can play everybody. Exactly. And like, the thing is, when you have had as great a streak of luck as she has had, it's understandable that you get a little bit overconfident. I mean, that happens, right? I think we've all been there. My favorite example in overconfidence is when you like, are so used to being able to sort of like snow professors or teachers and pass in like half done work that's still head and shoulders above the rest of your classmates, and you expect them to be really blown away by it, and because usually it works. And you finally one day run across that one professor who is not falling for your bullshit, who can tell that you really did not put a lot of thought into this, who can see that you recycled a bunch of other ideas, maybe even like recycled an entire essay. I've done things that were close to that, where I took an essay for something else and like tweaked parts of it and handed it in, and my teacher was perfectly happy with it. But then you run across somebody who is on top of their shit and you can't pull the same things with them. Kai says, I'm feeling very attacked. Yeah, I mean, I'll never forget that. And that's one of my favorite parts of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, is there's a whole thing with a character who runs into that. And you know, it's almost like you get mad initially because you're so used to people being impressed with you, but then your like opinion of the teacher and your respect for them does kind of grow because you realize that you can't use the same tactics on them. And that's part of what I think has happened with Eve and Villanelle, is like, she runs across Eve. She tries to play her. She realizes that Eve is not falling for it. And while there's a moment of being like, fuck, then next moment she's sort of pleased. She doesn't want Eve to be playable. She doesn't really need another person in her life who's just as easily fooled as everybody else has been. So yeah, he's telling her, I know you're nervous, but you don't have to be. You go in, you find the doctor, kill Nadia, and come out. And she is asking, what if somebody recognizes me? And there is a lot of this like pretense at being worried that I can't tell how much of it is true and how much of it isn't. But she says, and you will come and get me. And he says, I swear in my heart. And he really manages to get across the I swear in my heart. But when he puts his hand up to her face, and thank you for pointing that out, Agnes, the little bracelet that his daughter made him is on his wrist. And I feel like it's a bit of a reminder of what exactly is at stake for him here. She goes to lick his hand and says, I won't need a few days. I'll see you tomorrow. So they get out of the car and she gets put into the back of one of the prison vans. And you can see, like, I think that she is acting for his benefit in some respects, but I don't think that she likes going into this prison after having gotten out of here once before. I think that there is some actual trepidation here. It's not all an act. And so, yeah, she gets into the van, and as she does, there's this song playing that's like saying something like, Mom, I did something bad. I looked back. And I really liked the way that the song foreshadows everything, and the fact that she is here because she screwed up, you know? So then we go to the credits and back into the prison. She is being strip searched, cavity search, really awful. And then she has this moment with the guard where she like acts like a little snotty to her, and the guard slaps her across the face. And in response, she slaps the guard right back and gets beat a little bit. It's not an extended thing, but they fucking get her. And it's a reminder for all of us that Eve is out of her element here. She is really used to being able to do what the fuck she wants. And she is surrounded by people who are never going to allow that to happen. She goes and gets put in her cell and demands to see the doctor, and they close it in her face and will not let her see the doctor. And again, she came in thinking, I'm going to get this done same day, and is realizing that this might be a little bit more of a challenge than she had thought. It's just all clearly like she's just not quite taking this seriously, or she is so eager to get the fuck out of this place that she is trying to rush things, and it's not going to work that way. So then we go to Eve, and she's saying, is it Oksana? And I love that they're like talking about whether to call her Oksana or Villanelle. And she's saying Oksana initially, but then when one of them asks, are we calling her Oksana now? And she says it is her real name in sort of a defensive way. She says it like, well, yeah, that's what we're going to do because that's her real name. But then almost immediately turns around and goes back into calling her Villanelle a second later. So I found that kind of fun. And I think that's sort of what all of us are doing as well, right? We're all just sort of like going back and forth with the way that we're talking about her. And I think most of us just wind up on Villanelle because Oksana doesn't seem to suit her for whatever reason. But what it is that she's asking, is it Oksana, about is that it is they found out that there is a prisoner in the Russian women's prison. And I'm forgetting Carolyn's son's name. What is his name? Is he Kenny? He's Kenny, right? He says Russian intelligence picked her up near Bletchem and took her out of the country. And so they figure out that it's Nadia, that it was somebody else. She was the second assassin. And she was also the same one that Villanelle was locked up with 3 years ago. So, of course, you know, Eve is like, well, she knows her. Are you kidding me? Like, if she's alive, let's fucking go talk to her. She might be able to tell us something. And Carolyn says, well, if she's a lead, she's definitely, even if she's not a lead to Villanelle, she's a lead to the 12. So yeah, we should definitely do that. And Carolyn says in this moment, there are some delicate strings I could pull. Perhaps they're worth a tug. Perhaps they're worth a tug. Oh, you don't say. And when you say tit. So we're going to Moscow. But first, we're going to have a confrontation with Nico. This is a scene. This is really interesting. So Nico is at his usual like little, you know, gambling hall thing, whatever that he hosts, smoking, which apparently is not something that he often does. And when Eve shows up, she notices and asks him if he's even allowed to do that in here, and asks if he's okay. And he shows her the front page of the Evening Standard, in which it says, MI5 officer found murdered. And he recognized this dude from Bill's funeral and is putting the pieces together that whatever it is that she's into, it's serious, because there have been multiple deaths within the span of a week now of high-level people. And Nico is freaking the fuck out. I have said it once, and I will say it again. I would absolutely be behaving like this. I would absolutely be panicking, demanding that Owen leave the job, demanding that Owen leave the country. Like, there is it's really easy as an outsider watching a TV show where there's a woman who like has this clear mission to really hold it against Nico the way that he's reacting here and behave as if he's kind of sort of boring, which he even says, I don't want to be the boring boyfriend. I get why people would be like, oh, shut up, this guy is so annoying. But really, think about what you'd be like. You'd absolutely be terrified and so angry. I don't want to be the boring dick husband type. And I don't want to stand between you and what you want to do with your life. But it is actually my job to stand in the way of something that puts it in danger. So he says, how many more people have to die before you complete this level? And she asks why he's so angry. And he says, I'm not angry. I'm scared. I don't want to shout at you, though. And she says, well, go ahead. Shout at me. Come on. And he says, why? To make you feel better? And she says, no, to make you feel better. And he kind of loses it and says, it doesn't make me feel better. You alive at home without scary ladies breaking into our house. That makes me feel better. To which Eve, understandably, responds with, she will keep breaking in. She will keep hurting people until I catch her. I have to find her. She wants me to find her. And he kind of gets mean here a little. I'm not mad at him about it. And says, do you want me to hold back your cape a little bit so you can go down on yourself a bit more? You're not saving the world, honey bunch. You're getting off on sniffing out a psycho. And she slaps him across the face, shoves him, and then takes 2 steps forward and shoves him again. And it's like a real shove. Like he looks like he almost falls over and he just manages to keep himself. And he stares at her. And this is one of those moments where it's like, you know, she's a small, petite woman. Her going up against this guy will not be seen the same way it would as if he hit her, right? He hits her and immediately everybody is going to say she should leave him, which she should. But Eve hits him and people are going to be like, I mean, he was being really shitty to her because they just don't really understand. When you choose to hit your partner that way, it's not about the physical harm you can do. That's not really it. Like, it is absolutely about physical harm in most situations. But that's not the only aspect we have to look at here. We have to look at the fact that not only did Eve slap him, which is disrespectful enough, but she slapped him during an argument where he is really worried that she's going to be dead soon after their house was broken into. And after a moment after slapping him, shoves him. There's a breath where she could stop herself, and then she just does it again. And that is abusive. That's just it. It doesn't matter if she punches him and he has a bloody nose and winds up. Like, the damage that she did with her strike isn't the point. It's the act itself that is totally unacceptable. And he looks at her. You can see that moment of just, oh, wow, that's what we're doing? Really? And he says, you don't want that in your life, whatever that is. And he starts to walk away. And you can see her sort of starting to it's not even like she grows ashamed of herself. It's more like she's standing there thinking through what just happened and doesn't seem to feel that she did anything wrong. I don't feel shame coming off her in that moment. I don't think she feels bad about it. I really don't. It just seems like she's angry at him for not taking her seriously, or like, and he said honey bunch because he knew it would get a rise out of her. He said honey bunch in a dismissive, shitty way, but I don't think he was entirely wrong. I think that it was like her being like, she's going to keep hurting people unless I do this. She's trying to frame it like she's really out here worried about like the safety of the public. We know from the way that she has reacted to people being hurt, it's not about that for her. Like, she is interested in Villanelle specifically. She is interested in the way that Villanelle has been able to pull off these murders. The only time that it has really seemed to like sink in for her what Villanelle is like and how dangerous she is after Villanelle went after Bill specifically, somebody that was close to her. But otherwise, this whole thing about how I am trying to keep her from hurting other people doesn't ring true for me, because I think she will catch Villanelle and then she will go on to the next psychopath out of fascination, not necessarily due to the damage that person is doing. I just think that maybe Nico has a better grip on what she's doing than she wants him to. And she likes to be able to say that it's an altruistic sort of like campaign for justice. And she doesn't like the fact that he can see through it, because nobody likes to like be told about themselves. Nobody wants to be telling a story and then have somebody interrupt and be like, that's garbage, right? I know the real story and I know that you're lying. Stop it. Nobody likes that. So he starts to walk away and he says, it's okay. Let's just get a curry and forget that happened and go home and apologize with tea. And you see her turn and look at him and she says, I can't. I have a work thing. It's very clear. She does not really seem to feel she has anything to apologize for. And the fact that Nico is so immediately ready to let it go, I find, frankly, a little bit worrying. Like, Nico, I understand that you want to hold this all together and that you care about her, but my dude, I'm sorry, buddy, you are going to have to get out of this, because she does not care about you the same way. And even if she did, this is still not a healthy situation for you. And the fact that you are immediately like, she just like, she's being so dismissive of his very real concerns here, that he is the one to extend the olive branch and be like, let's just go home and have something to eat and pretend this never happened. Yikes, dude. No, you need to get out of there. You need, like, if she comes home and he has moved out, I will not be surprised. And I will say good for him. So then we cut to Moscow. And we have this whole sequence with them driving down the streets and Carolyn talking about how she says, my bones come alive in this country. And she's really trying to make herself look cute. She's wants something moisturizing for her lips. There's a bit where she's like, they're apparently like going to be meeting with somebody. And Eve starts to sense that maybe she's like wanting to make herself look better for this guy and makes a joke about it. And Carolyn tries to play it like she has no idea what Eve is talking about. But it turns out she very well does. And she's just kind of fucking with Eve a little bit. So we get to the hotel and she says something about how she always like books the like kind of shitty old hotels rather than the good ones. And she wants to go and change. And Eve says, well, you look great. And she says, no, give me 15 minutes. We'll get a head start on the cocktails. And Eve is watching her run off. And you can see her already kind of being like, why is she being this way? Like, there's just a sense right away that Eve is a bit apprehensive about the attitude that Carolyn is taking right now. So she gives her husband a call. It goes to voicemail, and she doesn't leave a voicemail. She just winds up hanging up. Not great, you know? Like, she's not handling her shit. She's just not. So we go to the actual restaurant where she and Carolyn are having cocktails before they meet with the two men that they are going to be exchanging information with. And Carolyn really gets intense here with the way that she is talking to Eve about her husband. Because they're having cocktails. Eve says she wants 10 of them. And Carolyn asks if it's a problem with her personal life and says it's best not to have one. We can't help what we are. And Eve says, yes, we can. Carolyn says, I'm not very good at this sort of thing, but there are some people who are simply going to do the thing they want to do because they know that in the long run, it's better for everyone that it happens that way. But that's hard. For the individuals and their lives to swallow, it's hard for their families to understand. And don't for one second forget that you're trying to make the world safer for everyone. Not just, and she gives a pause and Eve says, Nico. They all die in the end anyway. To which Eve looks at her and is just like, what? I mean, honestly though, what? Basically, what Carolyn is saying here is you are a single-minded, selfish person, and you just kind of have to be okay with that and like figure out people around you who are also okay with that. Some of us are just single-minded, selfish people, and we just kind of have to, you know, function and figure it out. And you're one of us. And Eve is trying to not like admit to herself that's who she is, but like maybe she is. You know, people talk about being selfish as if it's the worst thing you can possibly be. And oftentimes it can be, and definitely in certain situations. But I definitely think that where we run into more problems is when people are selfish and they won't admit that. And they try and lie to themselves. If you are aware that you're selfish and you're willing to kind of like factor that into the way you deal with the world, there's some self-awareness there that I think you can work with, that other people can work with. I can be very selfish. Like, I really can. But when you try to pretend that's not what you're like or what you're doing, it's like anything. You just have to be honest about who you are. Selfishness or insecurity, or if you're somebody who gets jealous, or there are a million different flaws that I think the real problem comes from not admitting that flaw and trying to pretend either that it isn't there or that it's actually this something else rather than what it is. Because then you can't cope with it. And nobody else around you can cope with it because they're not allowed to treat it and talk about it like what it is, you know? So, okay, here comes this dude walking in. His name is Vladimir. And the way that Carolyn behaves here, guys, it is so good. Her acting here. Aunt Petunia, what are you doing? She puts her face in her hands. And then sort of like, and like puts her head back and looks up at him. It is the most seeing an old flame for the first time in years moment. It is unmistakable what is happening here. And Eve can fucking tell. I mean, she's obviously a little bit irritated that Carolyn didn't tell her the truth about this entire situation, especially considering how Carolyn just got through telling her that not having a personal life is best. But then it's obvious they're in Moscow, like, for Carolyn's personal life, because Carolyn continues on with this throughout the episode of feeling way too secure in her situation with these guys, and too certain that she knows what they're thinking and what they're feeling. And she seems to really believe that they have the advantage when there's no real reason to think that. It's a weird, like, overconfidence that she has that I think is born out of the high of being around these men that she has this history with. So yeah, she, they have their little conversation about, like, you know, the small talk. I have an agent from the office joining. I don't want you off the leash wanting for anything, he corrects her. I wish it could just be me, but America is keeping us on her toes. But you can trust this guy. And she says, who is it? And he says, oh, I think you may have heard of him. And in walks Constantine. Now, I said it once already, that Constantine can get it. He's older man, probably a good, like, 20 years older than me. Maybe older. It's fine. He's got it. Whatever it is, he's got it. And I can understand absolutely why she is into him. And I love the fact that we're doing this with older characters and having it be a much more realistic, like, depiction, I think, of, like, romantic entanglement and how that can mar people's judgment. Because obviously when you think about, like, spies and the like, you know, affairs of the heart and the way that can interfere, you always think of super hot young spies walking around in evening gowns slit up to their waist and tuxedos with their fucking pecs bulging through. And these are real people in a very, like, what looks to be low-key situation in a restaurant, dressed very conservatively, and it doesn't matter. That's still what's happening here. And I really enjoy seeing it in this context and how strange it is. And yeah, she grabs his hands and, like, wiggles him and says something about, you old ass. And you can see Eve looking at the two of them like, what is happening here? And the entire evening is spent with exchanging these ridiculous stories about the things that they have been through together. And it's like Eve could not be more of a third wheel. Vladimir is enjoying himself because he also, we find out, had slept with Carolyn, and he wants Carolyn to be off her game because she's distracted by Constantine. So he doesn't care that this is the way this is going, but Eve is distinctly uncomfortable. And finally, Carolyn gets down to business, but it takes a minute. So she says, why did you take Nadia? And they all just do the who? And she slides the photo over and gives them the whole thing. She tells them that we know this woman has been working as a sleeper agent in the UK for Russian intelligence. And they say she's more of a friend. And she says, oh, well, now she's rather friendly with us. She told us that she was helping Frank Hallaton with safe passage. Why did you want to talk to him? But that's not what she told them. So she's really kind of like behaving as if she's got this information, but in sharing this information, she's showing her hand that she doesn't know anything. It's a very, like, not great move on her part. And they say he was relevant to a special investigation that we had here. We were sad we didn't get to speak to him. I mean, where did she get that? She told us he was, like, going to get safe passage. She did just invent that, right? Like, that's not, they haven't ever spoken to her. So why would she lie about something that they would definitely know the truth of? But I guess she's just playing it like they have no idea. He gave us some information about an organization we believe is behind a number of assassinations, including your Victor Kedron. And when he says our investigation is looking into that too, she says, I thought so. With this very sort of smug look, like that really proves something. She is just feeling herself in this scene where it's not like, that is not the appropriate reaction, Carolyn, is all I'm saying. You didn't earn that. I believe rather extraordinarily that we're on the same side here. Isn't that nice? Girl, what are you doing? This is hard because you see Eve, and Eve doesn't know as much as we do as viewers, but Eve isn't stupid. She knows enough to tell this isn't really going the way that Carolyn seems to think it's going. We will give you the name and everything else we got from Frank if you give us Nadia. And they say it's not appropriate. When Constantine interviews her, you can see via a video link. And they're like, no, we want to interview the girl with Eve. And I love this. He asks, what's so special about Eve? And she explains about how an operative broke in and attacked her. And he says, what did she want? And she says, dinner. And he laughs. But that's all she has to say. And I think he immediately knows exactly who she's talking about. But she uses the name Oksana. And you see his expression change a little bit. And he is looking at her in this way that Eve can read as he sees her as a threat now. She said some things that he doesn't want to hear. And Eve she's just better at reading what's actually happening here because she has more distance. Carolyn is too enmeshed in it. She doesn't seem to realize the way these men are reacting is not them caving. It's them collecting themselves and getting ready to handle a situation that they know about that she doesn't. Because immediately Vladimir stands up, says, I have to go, but tells Constantine to go with her. He's leaving because he needs to make sure some things are in motion here. And the whole thing, he says that, I don't need to worry about trusting you. We will definitely record you. Constantine gives her a business card and tells her that he will pick her up tomorrow. And you can't help but notice that when when Carolyn reaches forward to take the card from him, she puts her hand on his in this affectionate way for a moment before she takes the card. And he says these drinks are vicious because he knows that's something that Carolyn says. And she starts giggling hysterically because she feels like she's really on the inside of this joke. They're playing her. It's unbelievable. What a great scene, though. And she, again, they walk away and she says, oh, they hate that we know more than they do. They just hate it. And Eve, you could see all over her face, she wants so much to believe Carolyn's version of how this went. She really wants to trust that Carolyn knows what she's talking about, that this confidence and the fact that Carolyn said they hate we know more than they do is an indicator that Carolyn's head really is in the game. She really is doing her job. But it's really difficult to ignore all of the other things that were happening just now. And when they go back to their rooms, Eve says, they're each right next to the other and they're unlocking their doors. And she says, I don't like him. And Carolyn says, Vlad's all right. He just wishes he was higher up. And she interrupts and says, no, Constantine, I don't like him. And she says, oh, all right. Well, they're no more slippery than we are, I suppose. And I'm like, aren't they? Why do you think that? And Eve says, are they old friends? And she says, no. But then sort of smirks to herself and then just says good night. Because I guess they're not, but like, that's not what it's about. So I guess she's kind of telling the truth in her way. So we go back into the prison and I'm kind of running out of time. So I'm going to speed things up a little bit here. But long story short, Villanelle tries to get work in the kitchen, which I think we wind up finding out is kind of one of the more preferred jobs. And you don't get in there unless you've like done some other things to get yourself in there. And she tries to argue about it, and probably mostly because this guard just specifically does not like her, gets put on cleaning the drains out in the women's bathrooms. Really, really gross. And she meets this other woman and kind of befriends her. This woman who is in there because she is spontaneously violent. And we cut from her befriending this woman to the interview between Nadia and Carolyn and Eve. And Nadia is offered by Carolyn basically a complete relocation and protection in exchange for information, which Eve later says they can't actually offer. And Carolyn tries to argue with Eve, saying, you have no idea what I can offer her. But I'm pretty sure Eve does know. And I'm pretty sure Carolyn would prefer Eve simply not point out that she was misleading this girl. She doesn't like the fact that Eve is calling her out on this. I think she just wanted Eve to go with it, you know? So she's in the middle of talking about it's a really interesting moment because she says like, you know, I don't trust you. They're like, well, we'll give us some information and we'll work on it. And if we can if it turns out to be good, we'll get you out of here. And Eve says, tell us about Oksana. Were you friends when you were here together? And did you help her escape? And there's a moment where Carolyn seems a little bit alarmed that Eve spoke up in this way. And it's difficult to read whether she approves or not. There's just a kind of a concern. And Nadia says, it was meant to be me. He was meant to take me. And she wanted to meet him. And she wanted to meet him to be sure I was safe because she loved me. And then begins to say, but I don't know what she did to him, but he took her. If you want to know about Oksana, you need to find her. And as she says this, Constantine comes in and sits down and says the sound wasn't working in there. It's very clear he wants her to know he's here listening. And it's very clear to Eve that this is the reason why Nadia suddenly begins changing her story. But you see Carolyn tell Nadia, as Nadia starts clamming up, it's okay, he's with us. And Eve is looking at Carolyn like, can you not fucking tell that she has shut down because it's him? It's not a stranger that it's him specifically. She knows who this guy is, but she can't say that because there's no proof. There's nothing to substantiate that. It's just a gut feeling that she has about the way this whole thing just went and the way that Nadia keeps looking over at him. It's very clear, but Carolyn doesn't want to see it because she trusts him. Because she fucked him and wants to fuck him again. Basically, it comes down to that. So they say, Anna, the reason she was here in the beginning. And as she says that, she kind of glares at Constantine. And I think it's because she's lying, but she's like looking at him like, are you happy now? And Eve says, Anna who? And there's just this moment, and he finally says, tell them. It's him giving her the signal that, sure, this false lead is safe. Go ahead and feed them this line of garbage. We cut to the yard, and there's a plan that Villanelle is trying to orchestrate where she is going to get in a fight with her new friend, and she's trying to, like, you know, set it up and be like, oh no, I'll take the blame. I will get, I provoked you, because she sees Nadia being led around on a crutch and is trying to find her opportunity. So she gets decked. This whole fight breaks out. She keeps on provoking this woman by saying, like, your fanny smells, you're a giant ball sack, the whole thing, in order to get herself taken to the doctor. And this is like a weird, the doctor, I don't know how you guys felt about him, but does he just like radiate fucking like this sinister energy, or is that just me? The doctor freaked me the fuck out. I will tell you that. So we go back to Eve and Carolyn in the car talking about the organization, the 12. And Carolyn is trying to be like, this is good for you, Vlad. If you let us get her out of here immediately, we could have more for you. She just doesn't even seem to enter her head that they're part of this. It's really something. He says, I cannot sanction it, and you know that. And she says, you don't have the authority? And he says, do not test the limits of my authority, Carolyn, and I will not test yours. I hope you appreciate our help so far. We will look into everything from now and update you. The girl stays in Russia. And the fact that they're doing this, Eve is really frustrated. She is... again, this seems like a clear like flag to her that they are invested in this girl and they don't want to let her out. But Carolyn is seeing it as like they simply don't believe that they should cooperate. It's unclear like what she thinks is happening here, but the idea that they are trying to hold on to her for their own reasons doesn't really seem to like enter her mind. She says he'll change his mind. We just need to find something for him to nibble on. And you just see Constantine get this look on his face like, yeah, okay. So Villanelle sees the doctor and he gives her a knife and tells her that after she does it, she will have to get herself thrown in the hole and they will take it from there. This dude I'm telling you guys, he freaks me out. I don't like him. There's something dead about his eyes. So we have the conversation between Carolyn and Eve where Carolyn tells her basically that she has slept with both of these guys. And that she let people believe, because she uncovered this plot involving some plutonium, she let people believe that Vlad was her source, even though he wasn't, which really cost him. And she was doing it to protect her source. But, it's made him feel it's lowered his standing in the organization. She said earlier, like, he just wishes he was higher up. And we know now why he's not, because they don't think they can trust him, because they think that he like spilled something to her when he didn't. So Eve starts laughing and says, "I'm sorry, I don't like your boyfriends." To which Carolyn says, "Well, I'm sorry, I don't like your husband." And Eve says, "What?" And she says, "It's all right. I mean, you can still," or she says, "I'm sorry, you don't like your husband. It's all right. You can still love him. For me, it was always the ones I liked the least, I loved the most. And maybe it was the fact that I loved them that made me dislike them so much." And you can see Eve just kind of like bugging out as she says this. Like, she doesn't want to believe that she doesn't like Nico, but she's like, maybe she's nailed it. Maybe that's it. And then Carolyn says, "Well done today. You just about held your nerve," as she walks away. And Eve is standing there with this, like, you know, backhanded weird compliment that wasn't really, looking very sort of unsure of herself. So she gets on the phone and she calls Kenny. And she tells him that she wants him to look into what's going on here. So first of all, she says, "Have we found anything on Anna?" She says she's the wife of the man Oksana murdered. And there's this pause, castrated 6 years ago. And she says, "Okay, I need you to look into any private correspondence between Konstantin Vasiliev." And he says, "And who?" And she says, "Your mother. I'm sorry." And he calls her back later, a little bit freaked out. And I low-key wonder if this is not Konstantin's kid. Because she said, like, what was it, the 80s that this fling happened? I feel like that might be. I don't know. Maybe I'm ridiculous, but he just sounded so freaked out. And it could be that it was just about purely his mother, and that she turns out to not be who he thought. And so that is enough to shake him. But there was something more to it, I felt, and I might just be reading into that. We'll see. So then we have the whole scene where Villanelle is working up to killing Nadia, who's handing out the food, and she's in line waiting for food. And her friend has come up behind her and is kind of fucking with her. And she tells her not to do it right now, but her friend keeps doing it because she's like trying to joke around, and, you know, she feels like, "Hey, you're my friend. What?" Villanelle kind of shoves her, and she drops a knife, and the other girl grabs it first. And they wind up fighting over it. And it's a really big, messy fucking fight. At which finally Villanelle winds up stabbing one of the guards, but doing it while both their hands are on the knives, and making it look as if the other girl was actually the one who did it. And as she runs away and is like, "Oh my God, look what she did," the girl says, "I did do it." Like, it's clear there is something going on with her mentally. And she is really willing to accept this version of things to a point that feels almost like she wants to be the bad one. Like, she feels like she deserves the punishment. And it's just this really bizarre moment of her kind of like losing touch with reality for a moment, and her saying, "I did it. I know I did it." And one of the guards comes up to her, and honestly, it's kind of sweet for a second. The guard comes up and says, "Do the numbers. Remember, like we talked about, 7, 6. And she's trying to like get her to breathe through it. And the woman is following her instructions and trying to calm down. But then Villanelle comes up and stabs the guard in the back and the stomach. And I just really felt for this guard for like a moment here. She's trying to like keep this girl in check and like calm her down, and being fairly compassionate about it. And it's, you know, just, I feel bad. So Villanelle takes the keys, and what she winds up doing is going and hiding in Nadia's cell under Nadia's bed. Nadia comes in and obviously doesn't know Villanelle is there right away, and she writes this note that she manages to get out under the door of her cell before Villanelle actually sincerely begins to try and attack her. And it's addressed to Eve, so I don't know if Eve will get it. I don't know if anybody will find it and know who that is, or if it will just get scooped up by, the people who are in charge of this whole fucking prison, apparently. Maybe they will find out what Nadia was going to try and tell Eve. I don't know, but I guess we'll see. Maybe. Meanwhile, Eve sets up a private meeting with Vladimir, and he's like, Carolyn doesn't even know you're here, does she? And she tells him finally, in order to get him to cooperate, I know it wasn't you who told Carolyn about the plutonium. And I know who her source actually was, and I can prove it. He's one of yours. Because Carolyn told her that her source was Constantine. Now, I don't know how she says, and I can prove it, because maybe she was recording it on her phone. Maybe she got Carolyn actually telling her all of this shit, which would be pretty fucking devious, but I would respect it. But she does say I can prove it, and I don't feel that Eve would say that unless she could. I guess we'll see. And then we go to, or maybe it's something that Kenny uncovered, So the scene with Nadia, I feel so bad because Nadia is just still really wanting so much to believe that Villanelle cares about her. Villanelle is hugging her and kind of letting her cry onto her shoulder. It's awful. I just this whole scene is so sad. And while she's hugging her, Nadia says, "Are you going to kill me?" And Villanelle just says, "Mm-hmm." And as she says it, she sort of smiles. That delivery, there's a moment in Vampire Diaries where one of the girls is wrapped up in Damien, I think is that character's name. And she's sort of I think she's glamored. And she's talking to him and she says, "Are you going to kill me?" And he just is looking at her very idly, tracing his finger over her face. And he just goes, "Uh-huh." But it's this very distracted sort of it doesn't really matter. Why are you even asking me this right now? Kind of response. And this reminds me of that a lot. And I find it very chilling how casually it's done. Mm-hmm. And eventually, she stabs her to death. It takes a minute to get there. And the guards find her covered in blood and she yells, "Take me to the hole." And Villanelle really thinks that taking her to the hole is going to result in her getting taken out of here. She's completed her mission. Everything is fine now. But I think we all knew, right? Guys, I'm not the only one. She gets thrown in the hole and left there. Because of course she does. Bitch, they don't care about you? What are you thinking? Oh my God. She kills me with this. Kenny, when he calls Eve, he says, "Can you just go to your room? I found something from Constantine." And he is just he looks like he wants to cry. He's just saying some letters. What sort of letters? And like I said, we don't find out about what that is. But yeah, it can't be something that Kenny found that is her proof, because she gets this call after that meeting. So she must have recorded it, right? She had to have. So we see Villanelle in the hole, really smiling to herself, feeling like she's so relieved. She got it done. She's going to get out of here. But when the doctor comes to the door to give her some pills to calm her down, she's like, "Okay, so where's Constantine?" And he says, "Who?" And she says, she makes this expression like, "Are you an idiot? Constantine." And he just repeats it back. I don't know what you're talking about. And just closes the thing. And that's when she realizes and just begins screaming, "Let me out." And the episode pretty much just ends on her screaming, "Let me out." And that's the end. And I was just like shaking my head like, she is so clever and so devious, but she did not see this coming. And I just, girl, what is the matter with you? Oh my God. So yeah, I am dying to know what the deal is with the letters. I am absolutely going to be watching the next one of these right away. Actually, I'm going to check and see when the next one is right now because I want to know. But yeah, I just like, okay, let's see. What's today? The 28th. The next one isn't until March 10th. Okay, though, but that's not that far, actually, now that I think about it, because I'm taking next week off from recording Spoil Me's, so it's just like the week after. So that's pretty good. Yay, okay, good. And then the 24th, the 27th, I got a few right close together, but then not from March until May. All of April, I'm going to be without. Such distance between episodes. Guys, if you're listening and you want more of these, make sure to jump on that because they are few and far between at this point. All right, guys, thank you again so much for listening. Thank you to Khai for commissioning this episode. I really appreciate it. And thank you to all of you for hanging out here. And I will see you soon with a new episode. Till then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.